Welcome to yet another in the series of The Absence of Water. And this particular poem was written by Natalia Kuznetsova. And I want to read it to you, but then I had an interesting response to it because I live in a rural area. Dried up cornfields. Dad's weather-beaten face looks defiant. You know, I'll tell you, for good or for ill, when humans are dealing with nature and the actions of nature, sometimes your defiance works for you. Sometimes it works against you. And she's describing a member of her family. This isn't really so much about the absence of water as the response to that absence. I could get into a long, drawn-out environmental thing, but most of you understand that climate change is real, and humans are a big cause of it. We're not the only one. Mount St. Helens can blow and puts a bunch of stuff in the air. There are 3.1 million vents in the ocean, volcanic, that blow up things and change the environment 5 miles down. But humans are sometimes the cause of their own problems. And it means we have to be defiant because we're fighting something that's stronger than us. Everything that's happening on the earth and in the earth is affecting us, and we're fighting it all the time. I mean, I don't know how the cornfield arrived there, but I'm willing to bet some trees were sacrificed. I'm willing to bet that water was diverted. It happens. Now, I'm not for getting rid of all the farmers and digging in the ground for roots and herbs. But here's someone who's feeding the crops, who's raising the crops, feeding the animals, feeding the humans. In order to do it, in order to accomplish the task that he's got, take care of his own family, and take care of the rest of us, he's got to be defiant. He's got to find a way around the weather. Sometimes it's just the cleverness of when you plant. Sometimes it's the cleverness of how you plow, or how you use your land, or how you maintain it. I'm not saying anything bad about this man. He's got to do what he's got to do to survive. And he's contributing to his family and to the rest of us. So it's an act of defiance that he has to figure out a way around the current situation. How do you live through a drought? And by the way, we are clever sometimes to our own undoing. We've diverted water all over the world in places it never should have been. And we brag we made the desert bloom. It's all an act of defiance of what's happening in nature. And I'm not mad at this farmer at all. I'm not mad at any of the farmers around me. And you shouldn't be either. Because they're not the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is our own design. And it's happened over hundreds, and in some cases, thousands of years. In the United States, for instance, we date back to the 1500s, but there are places that go back a lot further than that. I think in London, in the UK, they pretty much took every oak tree out just to take care of Henry VIII. So, bottom line is, we've got a dried up cornfield here, and Dad's weather-beaten face, that comes from fighting the elements, fighting nature. And He has a defiant look, but it's not resignation, because somehow we have to keep going in the current environment before we can bring the next one to fruition. And I always, I'm on a thing now, but relax. I'm calm about it. Strangely, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to call people names. As this farmer is doing what he has to do, and we all have to change in order to bring a change to him. Now, the next thing we may find out is that this farmer plants soybeans next year, who have a tendency to put nutrients back into the soil and produce higher levels of protein. We're learning. We're not learning fast enough for some, but we're learning. I'm 73. I've watched a lot of crazy shit get changed. And I admire this man. He's fighting it one way or the other. He's got to do what he's got to do. He's in a situation that requires it. I wish I didn't have to drive a car, but I do. Because I live 27 miles from the nearest hospital, and it ain't much of a hospital. I live 93 miles from the better hospital, and I am 250 miles from the best. So I look defiant some days too. So she has written a poem about somebody you can admire, somebody who's dealing with the problems in front of them the only way they can. With a weather-beaten face, a clever mind, and a look that it looks defiant. But sometimes I think we confuse defiance to the internal process where we're thinking of the solutions. Let's hope he finds soybeans the next time around. They're a good crop. And who knows, we might get the Chinese to buy some. This is a good poem. It's a simple observation that got me thinking about a whole lot of things. There's dried up cornfields. By the way, dried up cornfields quite often are not bad. Feed corn is allowed to dry, sometimes on the stalk. Yeah? So we don't know the whole story here. That's what makes a good senryu. That's what makes a good haiku. Is that the focus of this is on Dad. It's not on the cornfields. He's reacting to it. And she's reading something into his face. I don't know. I don't know what the story is. But I have made up my own stories. Probably a dozen of them already on this poem. And that's what makes a good senryu. That the story is not being told to you like a chapter in a book. It's being presented to you to take and move and twist any way you want. But I come from a family. My grandmother was extremely proud of the fact she reminded us all the time we come from peasant stock. We're peasants. If we acted up as kids, you're just peasant stock. Who do you think you are, Mikey? Who do you think you are? So, I have a lot of empathy for this poem. Let me read it to you again. Dried up cornfields. Dad's weather-beaten face looks defiant. Thank you, Natalia. I appreciate you giving me this poem and reminding me, like my grandmother would remind me, of my peasant stock. Thank you.